Good morning. Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. You're watching Morning Cafe. This morning, we're focusing on family law once again, but we narrow down to child's right in regards to right to identity and a child's right to know their father. And to help us unpack this, we have John Wesonga on Zoom. Of course, we'll be unpacking what the law says, what it fails to address, and what justice looks like, for the child courts in between. So karibu sana wakili to TV47. This is Morning Cafe. Good to have you on set. Wakili, kindly unmute your microphone.
Thank you so much, Monica. How are you?
Good. So you know, I just want us to start by a brief introduction, because sometimes we define a child's right to know their father in a layman's language, but we know you Wakilis usually say there's what the law says. So what does the law say about the child's right to know their father? What does it mean in the legal perspective?
When we talk about a child and we talk about the rights, it's not just about the child. It's not just about the right to know their father. It's about the child identity. It's not about the father. It's about the child. So the law comes in to protect the child. And when the law says that the child has a right and it goes ahead to protect that right, it is protecting the right as against the parents, against the father, against the mother, and against the whole world. So it's not just about the father, it's about the parent. So this law protects both the identity to the child as against the mother and also as against the father. No, most of the time when we talk about children, we tend to be biased against the father, and we just try to believe that the mother is always in the picture. Sometimes even the father can, quote unquote, run away with the child. So it's not just about the father, but about the parent. Yes.
All right, Wakili, so are we limiting this definition to biological paternity only? Or are there legal frameworks for, the fathers who we call nowadays as those who stepped up? Men who may not be biological, but have been in the lives of this child?
So when you look at what the law provides, the law provides under Article 53 of our Constitution that every child has the right to a name and nationality from birth. When the child is born, that child has a right to a name, and that child has a right to a nationality. And also, when you look at our courts, courts have pronounced themselves. And to answer your question, this is a gray area that maybe we need more clarification, and we need maybe to do more research. When you talk about the father or the parent who has stepped up and has come up to the life of this child, initially, this parent who has stepped up, maybe they have their rights to the child, but also there's a parent who really did the biological act to bring this child to maybe into being. This parent also has the right to be involved in this child's affairs. So the law, normally, when we talk about the right to the children or the right to a child, it normally comes to protect the child, and more so, it does not, it turns a blind eye towards whoever is in the picture. So it doesn't matter whether you are a biological parent to this child or not, but as long as you are doing what the law stipulates, then I think the law is blind as far as the biology and whoever has stepped up, or there's some children who are adopted. Does it mean that they have lesser rights? No. So as long as you call yourself a parent, the child has a right against you, and those rights are protected. Yes.
So how does the inheritance issues play out in that case? A child is not a biological child to the man in question, But now when you're talking about matters of inheritance, say maybe the man has his own children, but now he has this one where he stepped up a bit. How does inheritance play out in such a situation?
You know, when it comes to inheritance, there's a law it's called Law of Succession Act, and it stipulates very well how inheritance comes about. So when you die, for example, there are two instances. You can die with a will, that is, we call your estate tested, and you can die without a will. We will call that scenario intestate. So when you die without a will, there's provisions that normally kicks in, and there are people who are stipulated as far as inheriting your estate is concerned. So they are beneficiaries, and the first beneficiary normally is your wife and your children. So your children comes in two aspects: your biological children and any child that you've adopted, or they can that you are like kinda providing before you died. So they're like your beneficiaries. So they are just like your children, like your biological children. So the law does not differentiate between a biological child and a child whom you have adopted. As long as they were under your care, you are providing for them, they stand on the same equal footing as though they are your biological children. So the law is very clear. It's not about you having given birth to them biologically, but as long as they are your beneficiaries, they were like, you are providing for them, including even your parents. If you are providing for your parents when you died, even your cousins, even your friends, if you're providing for your friends and they can confirm that indeed you are providing for them, the law provides that they can take a stake of your estate.
Wakili, there's often a legal assumption that once a child is born in wedlock, then the husband is presumed to be the father automatically. And right now we are seeing rising cases of infidelity. The DNA technology is also very quite high. The prices of DNA, I'm looking at it, the public hospitals give it at 27,000 thereabout. And of course private labs as well at 100,000 Kenyan shillings thereabout. How sustainable is that presumption? You know, that once a child is born in wedlock, then, you know, the husband automatically is the father. And from where you sit, is the law really evolving to meet that reality?
You know, the law as is, it reflects our society. So there is a rebuttable presumption, and underline the word rebuttable.
Yes.
There's a rebuttable presumption that any child that is born within wedlock is a child to the parents, to the father and to the mother. So it doesn't matter otherwise. So and I say rebuttable because if the father feels like this is not my biological child, then the father can go to court, and the only court is allowed to issue an order for DNA to be done. And once the DNA is done and it is found that now the child is not biologically the child to the father, then the responsibilities to the father will end. And I'm saying rebuttable because once the DNA confirms that you are not the father, then your responsibilities, you can choose to either step up and be the father as far as being the father is concerned, or you can also step down, and whoever is responsible will have to step up as a matter of law. So yes, as we speak right now, the law needs to evolve. You know, our laws reflects our society. Our society as is right now is that any child that is born within wedlock is the child to the parents. But that presumption can be rebutted by DNA, for example. Yes.
Wakili, when we were starting this conversation, I mentioned somewhere on the intro that we'll be unpacking what the law fails to address in regards to the child's right to know their father. Just where are the gaps, if you're talking about it?
the gaps as far as the right to come up again?
Yes.
I didn't quite get the last bit.
The gaps in as far as, a child's right to know their father is concerned in the legal framework. What is in the law clear about in terms of just, because I understand the Children's Act 2022, somewhere around Section 8, it speaks to the right to parental care and protection. So what gaps exist in terms of just ensuring that this is achieved?
So I would say that the law as is right now, it has tried, because this the Children Act is a recent legislation, and it has tried to kind of be as expansive as it can be. We have the law has tried to address most of the issues that were initially not addressed in the previous act of 2001, I think. So when I look at the law as is right now, maybe what it has failed to provide is maybe the right to the child as far as accessing education is concerned, because there are no clear stipulation on how you can have that identity. The father can be in your life, but if this father or this parent fails to meet up their responsibilities, you'll find that the act is silent, the law is silent. If, for example, today I fail to take my child to school, nothing really will happen to me as the father. So the law on as far as accessing education, and we know right now education is key to every child, or rather to everyone. So if we find that such an important aspect of life, there are no mechanism on how to enforce that provision, you'll find that that's a gap that we need to address. Also I would think about child labor. The law has really failed to protect the child as far as the child labor is concerned. When you just take a stroll right now across our streets, you'll find most children or underage children doing manual work. And to this extent, I feel like the law has failed to protect this child, because sometimes it is the situation that forces them to do what they're doing. But the state also needs to come in and make sure that as far as the children are concerned, they're not supposed to engage in child labor. Other countries have done it. For example, in the UK, before you hit the age of, for example, 16 years, you are not allowed to. The child is protected. They can't do any manual work as far as labor is concerned. So I think our law has failed, or there's a gap as far as that is concerned. And also, when we talk about, normally, in so far as identity is concerned, we tend to presume that it's always the mother who decides what's the best interest of the child. And in most cases, we fail to recognize the father. Also, I think the law has a gap as far as protecting the identity of the child as against the father is concerned. So I think those are some of the gaps that, if I take a quick scan of our Children's Act, that's what I can see for now. And courts have tried to address themselves on this issue, and maybe I think we will delve on that later.
So in short, you're saying the law does fall short in enforcing what the Constitution says in Section 8 on the right to parental care and protection. Wakili?
Yeah, enforcement mechanism is not very clear, because the law is not supposed to be there in vain. Whenever there's a provision in law, there has to be a mechanism on how you're supposed to enforce that provision. It's not just there for the sake of being there.
All right. And
So
okay.
when we have a provision that the child has a right, for example, to education, and we fail to provide how these rights are supposed to be realized, then that law, it becomes just like a flower in the garden. It is there just for purposes of beautifying the garden, but not really for purposes of enforcement. So we need like to come up with some mechanism to make sure that indeed, when we talk about the right to education, we have a way of enforcing the same. The government has tried to enforce the right to education, but as far as the child is concerned, it is not enough. So there's a gap that we need to address on that.
All right. I see you muted me. But in some family setups, I hope you can hear me.
I can hear you loud and clear.
In some family setups, we see that fathers are deliberately left out of, birth certificate issues. And maybe some parents, some mothers, of course, say it's because of shame or matters of secrecy. So what is the legal implication of that particular omission when the father is left out of the birth certificate? And say the child wants to reverse it maybe in future. Is there room for that?
Okay, thank you so much for that question. And I think this like the main area of conversation, the right to identity. And once the child is born, the first identity to the child is that birth certificate. And that birth certificate, it's a primary document that will use to generate other documents in future for this child. So this child has a right to be identified. And when some mothers, the way you've rightly put it, they deliberately leave out the father and they decide the name and whatnot, that is wrong as far as our laws are concerned. And recently, I think was it last week or the week before, Justice Chemeitai addressed himself on this issue, and he said that the child has a right to be identified or the name to be given to him or her by both parents, because it is not just about the father. It's not just about the identity. It's about the child. When growing up, he or she needs to be identified by both parents. And yes, when you fail, or when the mother fails to include or to input the ideas of the father as far as the name is concerned, it will affect the identity of the child in future. And to answer your question about whether there is a room for changing the identity, yes, there is. You can change your identity via the provisions of the Registration of Documents Act. You do a deed poll. There's a whole legal provisions on that. So you can change your name. There are some documents that you need to file. You'll swear an affidavit, and you will have those documents registered. They have to be published in the Kenya Gazette in 60 days, I think, and thereafter you can change your name to whatever identity you want to be identified with. But you have only to do that after you've hit 18 years. You become an adult. But before you become an adult, yes, you can also change, but with guidance of either your parent or your guardian, or your parent or your guardian. So clearly, it's still something that needs to be worked on. But yes, you can. If you feel your name is not identifying you as far as your values, as far as your aspirations are concerned, there's a room to change your name or to change your identity.
All right, Wakili, what happens when maybe a man is willing to acknowledge paternity, but the mother refuses to cooperate on matters DNA? So does really the court help with compliance in such cases?
Yes, clearly. If the man is willing and able to step up, and the mother is kind of like not cooperating, the man can go to court and he can get a court order to force the mother to comply. So yes, the mother can be forced to comply with the provisions. The court can issue an order with the conditions to be met, and that compliance can be enforced by court.
So what happens
Yes.
to those fathers who, they don't want anything to do with the child, but of course we're talking about the child's right to know their father, but the father doesn't want anything to do with the child. Now what happens legally in that, in that particular situation?
The mother can, because this is about the child, the child has a right to know the father.
Yes.
And the father is not willing to be to be known.
Yes.
So that's also some sort of a gray area that we need really to address. Because sometimes this is not just about the law or about the legal provisions, also about the morality, about justice, basically. Because if I'm not willing to be known, there's really nothing that you can really do to force me to be known. So if it's all about provision, the court can force compliance. The first court can force me to comply to provide for the child, yes. But about just being known and I don't want to be known, that is, I kinda feel like that is more of a moral issue than a legal issue. So it just depends how I was brought up. Huh?
So courts,
Because really, can the court really force me to be known?
Wakili,
But the
courts
court
don't
can
have
really
a say
force me to
on
provide.
deadbeats? Wakili? So courts don't
Yes.
have a say on deadbeat dads?
Sorry?
Deadbeat dads. That is the term nowadays. So what you're trying to say is as long as somebody wants to be deadbeat, then court doesn't have a say or much, on that.
No, that's not what I'm saying per se. What I'm saying is, if you are a deadbeat dad and you are known at the court, and the mother knows that you are the father, and indeed she can confirm, maybe through DNA and whatnot, the court can force you to provide. You understand? But what I'm saying, there's a gray area is whereby the court forcing me to be in the life of this child, whereas I don't want to. Will the court come and forcefully take me to this child? No, but the court can force me to provide by using whatever means. For example, they can attach my salary if at all I'm employed somewhere. They can, for example, auction my properties for purposes of providing for this child. But really, the court it will be hard for the court now to issue an order that you must be in the life of this child. This child has to see you every day. You have to do this and this and this and that. I think that's a gray area, and really, when we say about deadbeat, in most cases, I tend to understand it's about a father who has refused to provide. And courts have pronounced themselves on that. It's not about just giving birth. It's not just about seed donation. Once you quote unquote donate that seed, you have to be responsible for that seed. You have to take care of that seed. It has to be, for crying out loud, you have created a human being. You have to be responsible for that human being. And as far as responsibility is concerned, we tend to believe it's more financial responsibility, or finances sort close to 80% of the problems. But there is this aspect of you being present in your child's life. You have to be present, but I tend to believe this is not it's not a legal issue per se, it's more of a moral issue. And not really a legal issue, because the court will not really force you to be in this life when you don't want to be.
Okay. Thank you so much, Wakili John Wesonga. That has been quite insightful, but of course we haven't, touched on very important issues. We'll be looking forward to having you on the show again for this conversation. But we were talking about the right to identity in regards to a child's right to know their father. Thank you so much, John Wesonga, for making time. That brings us to the end of this conversation and to the end of the show. Thank you so much for watching all the way from 6 a.m. up until now. Good morning. My name is Anne Odida.